Welcome to the Quitting Weed course. I'm going to show you the why and the how to quitting weed. I've been smoking weed since high school for the last 25 years. Yes, 25 years. And I've been smoking heavily. I was smoking almost every day. So much so, when I wasn't smoking, I was thinking about smoking. It's all I wanted to do. And I smoked a lot, a whole lot of weed. But I was able to quit. And so this course is intended to help people who want to quit smoking weed. It wasn't easy for me, but I did it. I quit weed. And I'm not looking back. So this course will give you the why and the how to quit weed. I think this course is best listened to, whenever you get the urge to smoke, which means you might view and listen to it many, many times. So let's get to the why. Why I wanted to quit weed. Well, no weed hangover. So when I smoke a lot, like I was saying a little bit earlier. And that was the only way for me. I was an addict. So I would smoke and smoke until I went to sleep. Probably in one setting, I would smoke maybe about 5 to 6 bowls. And then I would do that 5 to 6 times a day. So I would be smoking anywhere between 20 to 30 bowls a day. And so no wonder I would get this weed hangover. The following day, it would be this massive weed hangover. I would feel lazy. I would be up in my room. I'd be up with my eyes open. But it would take me like an hour just to get out of bed, unless I had to use the bathroom. And when I do get out of bed to start the day, I would move slowly, physically and mentally. And since I stopped smoking weed, I don't have a hangover in the morning. And I get more things done. And I'll cover this more in a different section. So more stamina. So after 2.5 weeks of not smoking, I noticed I had more stamina. And that's just 2.5 weeks after not smoking. You get even more stamina as more time passes. Like after 3 months and 6 months, you'll start realizing, wow, I just have a lot more stamina. And usually when I go for a hike, I get winded on my usual hike about halfway up my usual trail, up the trail that I normally hike. But since I stopped smoking weed, I don't get winded until about 3/4 of the way up. And eventually, I don't see myself getting winded on that trail at all when I go up. And I can hike a longer distance without stopping and resting. And I notice my heart rate takes longer to rise when I hike. I wear a smartwatch which measures my heart rate. And so when I did smoke, my heart rate would quickly go above 120 beats per minute when I reached halfway up the trail. Now my heart rate barely goes above 100 beats per minute when I'm halfway up the trail. So not smoking weed has given me more stamina. I can hike more. I can walk more. I can live more. Because for me, movement is living. I'm more social. And I'm an introvert. So I had a hard time hanging out with people unless they were good friends of mine. Casual acquaintances were tough for me. When I hung out with others, all I wanted to do was get back home and maybe drive to a park and smoke some weed. I would even cancel social events so I could stay home and smoke. And since I've quit weed, I find myself more willing to hang out longer, especially with casual acquaintances. Also, I listen more to other people talking. Weed would tire me out, and it takes some energy to be social. And being social with others is a good thing. It truly helps with happiness. And as humans, we're social beings. we don't need a lot of friends, but just a couple of friends is all you need, but you still need them. And not smoking weed makes me more likely to call and schedule time with my friends. This one's a big one. Eating better foods. If I have weed, I will constantly smoke it throughout the day, bowl after bowl. And when I smoke, I get the munchies. The more I smoke, the more I get the munchies. And when I get the munchies, I eat the worst foods. Pizza, burgers, bean and cheese burritos, ice cream, you name it. There were times I would order a burger and fries around 7 p.m., scarf that down in seconds, smoke some bowls because the high wore off from overeating, and then I would get the munchies again and order a pizza around 11 that night. I mean, my stomach would just expand. And I would spend way too much time on the toilet. And not just the time, but the frequency. 3 to 4 times a day, usually in the morning. And I wouldn't feel better until noon. So, since I've stopped smoking weed, I don't get the munchies. I do eat, but I don't overeat. And I don't crave unhealthy foods as much. I, oddly enough, crave better foods, like more fruits and vegetables. And I get a lot less lazy. So I'm more inclined to cook my food, which is better for my health and my wallet. More time to do stuff. So a lot of times I'm like ready to go, but I need to smoke a bowl or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times. And when I smoked, I would just lay on the couch for hours. And after I smoked, I would sit on the couch. And the next thing I knew, a couple hours would pass. And I would daydream and think about the past or just talk with myself in my head. After snapping myself out of the couch, I would start the day. I could have gone for a hike and be back by lunch and still have a half a day left. I'll put off exercise. I'll put off buying healthy food. Instead, I would just sit on my couch and smoke. And I can sit on the couch for hours when I smoke weed, just wasting the day. And since I've stopped smoking, I get up and go. Now I get my work and exercise done before noon, which leaves me time to do other stuff. I gain about 3 to 4 hours a day from not smoking weed. And this is time I won't get back if I smoke the weed. So doing stuff helps my happiness. And when I do more stuff, I feel more accomplished and satisfied for the day. Save lots of money. Now that's a big why. Why to quit weed? The best thing about quitting weed is that I'm saving a lot of money. I didn't even realize how much money I was spending until I wrote it down. But now that I've quit, I was surprised that my checking account doesn't deplete as much. I have a lot more money left than I used to have. And it's not just saving money on weed. I saved money on junk food takeout I ordered when I got high. So let's break it down. So I would get a pipe. Cost would be about $15. I would get a cheap pipe. And I would replace it about 4 times a year. Sure, I can clean it. But, you know, when you smoke a lot of weed and the resin or whatever that black stuff that builds up in the middle of the pipe, that stuff gets hard to clean. And I would be lazy. So about $15 4 times a year. So total cost about $60 a year. I would get a grinder, $15. Get a lighter. And a lighter would last me about a month at $3. So $36, not a whole lot. And then I would buy some weed. Average price about $50 for an eighth. And I would go through an eighth a week. So 4 eighths a week, $200 a month for the whole year. $2,400. I would get Visines because my eyes were always red, and I just didn't always want my eyes to be red. So I would get that once a month, and that would come out to $60. And then takeout food, and I would order that every day when I got high. So average cost about $12, sometimes more if I did delivery. So $360 a month, $4,300 a year. That comes out to close to $600 a month and $6,800, almost $7,000 a year. Yikes. And that's like rent or mortgage money. Or you can buy a nice vacation with that, an experience that you will remember for the rest of your life. So saving money is nice. And I can use that money to spend on necessities or experiences or just save it. And I still get to enjoy life, even when I'm not high. All right, so how to quit weed. Quitting weed was not easy for me. And I would tell myself that I would stop smoking weed the next day. And then the next day would come and I would give in and smoke weed. That would happen to me like 1,000 times. There have been like 7 or 10 times, probably even more, that I would throw my weed and pipe in the trash to quit. And then later that night or the following day, I would go through the trash to get my pipe and weed. And that was my cycle. Smoke weed, declare that tomorrow is when I'm going to quit. Tomorrow morning, I would change my mind and declare that I would quit the next day and go ahead and smoke some more weed. So just an endless cycle. So getting past day 1 was the hardest. And it was still hard getting past 3 days. But it gets easier. It got easier when I got to 7 days. So in my advice, take 1 day at a time. Don't beat yourself up for failing. Failing is a part of quitting. Just because I failed doesn't mean I can't quit weed. So just because you failed doesn't mean that you can't quit weed. Be honest with yourself. This is probably the most important how to quit weed. If you don't admit that you have a problem with weed, it will be impossible or nearly impossible to quit. It wasn't until like 5 years ago that I wanted to quit. But I would lie to myself that I didn't have a problem. I thought I could just quit like that or just smoke way less. But that didn't happen. So I decided to be honest with myself and call myself an addict. I was addicted to weed. And being honest with yourself isn't going to make you quit weed, but being honest with yourself is a necessary step and maybe the first step to quitting weed. Exercise. So one of the ways that helped me quit weed is to do stuff that takes my time. I'm less likely to smoke weed if I'm doing stuff, especially if it is an activity where I can't easily smoke while doing it. And exercise is one of those things. I can't smoke at the gym, and I don't smoke outside. I guess I could, but I don't want the neighborhood to know that I'm smoking weed, and smoking weed outside is not legal, at least where I live. And exercise can also replace the high you get from weed. There is a runner's high, and there's also a high from lifting weights. I also get a high type of feeling when I use the sauna. So exercise is the new weed for me, and it's socially acceptable, and I don't have to hide it from anybody. Spend less time with smokers. Now, this one is also a big one for me, but it could provide issues for others. Like if my friends are smoking weed, then I want to partake. I can't imagine everybody else being high and having fun, but not me. If you're trying to quit weed, especially in the beginning, hanging out with other weed smokers will be an issue. It would take a tremendous amount of willpower not to smoke. But there are some things you can do. You can avoid them just for 2 weeks, because once you get a streak going and get into the habit of not smoking, the urge to smoke gets less. And I felt it even after 7 days. The urge to smoke weed was gone. So if you have friends and family or even a roommate who smokes, avoiding them is going to be close to impossible. I would suggest to let them know that you're trying to quit. And they may even suggest themselves that they will not smoke in your company. Easier said than done, but it's worth a shot. Get an accountability partner. And the more and more time has gone on since I've been clean, since I stopped smoking weed, I find accountability to be very, very important. And there are some things you won't do for yourself, but you do because for others. And this works. Having someone that keeps you accountable, or at the very least, someone you don't want to disappoint, could help you quit weed. The accountability partner doesn't have to police you to quit weed. They don't even have to provide advice on how to quit weed. Just sharing with someone that you want to quit weed helps. First, it allows you to be more honest with yourself. If you let someone know you want to quit, it feels like the burden becomes lighter. Second, you can use that partner to check on your progress. A lot of times when something good happens to me, I want to tell others. Sharing your progress feels better than keeping it to yourself. And the most significant benefit of having an accountability partner is not to keep you in check, but like I was saying, to share your progress in quitting weed. Now, let's say if you don't have an accountability partner. My recommendation? Do a podcast or a newsletter or a blog on quitting weed. Share your story. Now, how does doing a podcast or a newsletter or sharing your story help you quit weed? Well, if you don't have anybody close to you that you feel comfortable being your accountability partner for quitting weed, then start a podcast, a newsletter, a blog. That's what I did. I have a podcast. It's called Quitting Weed. And if I smoked, I would disappoint my listeners, and more importantly, myself. And by having the podcast, I keep myself accountable. Or instead, the podcast keeps me accountable. And another good thing about starting a podcast or a newsletter or a blog, that you're getting a 2-for-1 benefit. You will quit weed and gain a new skill on how to create a podcast, a newsletter, or a blog. So that's it for today. Thanks for listening to this course. I recommend listening to this course often to help you persuade that quitting weed is possible, especially coming from me, who's been smoking weed heavily, I might say, for the last 25 years, but I've quit. So it's possible. If it was possible for me, it's possible for you. And just remember that failing at quitting is a part of the quitting process. It gets more effortless by day 7 of not smoking weed, and your energy, mood, and outlook on life will also change for the better. If you listen to this course, I'm rooting for you, and I'm accessible. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments, you can reach me by email at quittingweed@protonmail.com, and also on Twitter. My handle is @quittingweedpod. Thanks, everybody.